This video was sponsored by Circle, a service used to find hidden information about someone through background checks to see if the person you're speaking to is really who they say they are. More on them later.
It was just another normal Saturday night when I decided to open up Tinder and swipe away, seeing if there were any interesting guys in my area. After swiping on a bunch of profiles, one guy's pictures caught my eye. He was cute, around my age, blonde hair, bright blue eyes, big smile. His bio was funny and he seemed laid back. We matched and started chatting. The conversation flowed easily and he asked me out for coffee. I was excited. He seemed totally normal and we really clicked over text. We met up at a coffee shop downtown during the day. He looked just like his photos and was very friendly in person. We sat talking for hours and I felt totally comfortable around him. When it started getting late, he suggested exchanging numbers to plan another date. I agreed. He hadn't done or said anything remotely strange, so I didn't see any reason not to. Over the next week, we texted every day and really hit it off. For our second date, he proposed a walk around a park near my apartment. Again, nothing seemed off at all and I found myself really starting to like him. At the end of the date, he invited me over to his place the next evening for a home-cooked meal. I hesitated at first, but figured I knew him well enough by now that it would be fine. The next day, I let my roommate know I was going to his place and told her I'd text her when I was on my way home. That evening, I headed over, excited for our third date. He welcomed me in and gave me a tour of his apartment. It was a nice, normal place. Nothing seemed weird or out of the ordinary at all. He poured us both a glass of wine and started cooking dinner. We continued our usual light-hearted conversations as the food cooked. When it was ready, we sat down to eat. The meal was delicious, and I was really enjoying spending time together. I started to feel a bit strange, though, kind of dizzy and off. It dawned on me that he might have put something in my wine, just like that time in college when I had unknowingly been roofied at a party. I tried my best not to panic or act suspicious. As normally as I could, I told him I was just running to the restroom quickly. Once in the bathroom, I locked the door and immediately called 911, keeping my voice low. I told the operator where I was and that I thought my date had drugged me. They said a patrol car was on the way and to sit tight. I began to feel more and more disoriented and soon passed out on the floor. The next thing I knew, I was being shaken awake by a police officer. My head was pounding and I couldn't think straight. As they picked me up to carry me outside, everything faded back to black. I awoke sometime later in the hospital, an IV in my arm providing fluids. The doctor explained I had been given some pill, but that I was expected to fully recover. My memory of the night was patchy, but I knew I had gotten extremely lucky. A few days later, after being discharged from the hospital, I went to the police station to give my full statement on what had happened. After recounting the details, I hesitantly asked the officers why they had put a bag over my head when carrying me out of the apartment that night. The detectives got very serious and finally told me the horrifying truth. My Tinder date had set up a makeshift torture dungeon in his living room. They had covered my eyes to spare me from seeing the terrifying scene as I was rescued. I never heard from my Tinder date again after that night, and I hope he rots in jail forever. My story just goes to show you should always trust your instincts and be so careful meeting strangers online, even if they seem totally normal. I'm grateful I'm still alive and well, but I never used any dating apps ever again after my horrifying close call. Please learn from my mistakes and stay safe out there. Looking back, there were a few small red flags I ignored when I first started chatting with him. His Tinder profile didn't have much personal information, and he was very quick to ask me out after just a few messages. I should have video chatted with him at least once before agreeing to meet up. When we went out the first couple times, he avoided any deeper conversations about our families, values, and pasts. I was so caught up in how cute and charming he was that I didn't press him to open up more. He also pushed for my number and asked me back to his place very quickly, considering we were still practically strangers. My gut kept telling me to take things slow, but I got so swept up in the fairy tale idea of meeting the perfect guy online. I threw caution to the wind and convinced myself he was just shy opening up at first, and that we really had made an instant connection. Looking back now, that was extremely stupid and reckless of me. I'm relieved beyond belief that I escaped his apartment alive that night, but I'll always carry some trauma from it. For months afterwards, I had intense anxiety leaving my home, constantly looking over my shoulder, fearing I was being followed. I installed extra locks on my doors and bought pepper spray to keep bedside, though that was just small comfort. What happened destroyed my ability to trust for a long time. I cut myself off socially and avoided trying to date again, certain that all men online had sinister intents. My confidence was shattered, and I blamed myself endlessly for ignoring obvious red flags. With time and therapy, I've begun to heal both mentally and emotionally from my horrific Tinder encounter. My perspective has completely changed, and I'm hyper vigilant about protecting myself now. But I still have moments where the memories come flooding back, like when I hear a noise at night or see a guy who resembles my attacker. The scars run deep and may never fully mend. Sharing my story isn't easy, but I hope it helps even one person out there stay safe online dating. Don't make my mistakes. Listen to your intuition if something seems off, and put your guard up with strangers. Take your time getting to know new dates in public places first, and always tell someone where you're going to meet a new romantic interest, just in case things go wrong. If my warning can prevent someone else from ending up in the back of a police car, then speaking out is worth it. Please learn from what I went through and be smart out there. I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this, but here goes. It all started when I decided to try out a new dating app. One of those ones where you swipe right if you like someone's profile. I've been single for a while and figured why not give it a shot. After a few days of swiping, I matched with this guy named Jacob. His profile seemed nice enough. Good looking, had a steady job, liked outdoor activities. We started chatting, and he came across as funny and charming. After messaging back and forth for about a week, Jacob asked if I wanted to meet up for drinks. I was a bit nervous, but also excited, so I agreed. We decided to meet at this fancy cocktail bar downtown. I spent ages getting ready, trying on different outfits, and redoing my makeup. When I finally arrived at the bar, Jacob was already waiting outside. He looked just like his pictures, maybe even better in person. He was tall with dark hair and a nice smile. He greeted me with a warm hug and held the door open as we went inside. The bar had a cool, sophisticated vibe with dim lighting and jazz music playing softly in the background. The walls were lined with shelves of colorful liquor bottles, and there was a long marble bar where bartenders were mixing elaborate cocktails. Jacob had reserved us a cozy booth in the corner, away from the busier areas. As we sat down, Jacob asked what I liked to drink. I wasn't sure, so he suggested we try their signature cocktails. He ordered us both these fancy drinks with weird ingredients I'd never heard of. When they arrived, they looked like works of art, all colorful layers and garnishes. We started chatting, and the conversation flowed easily. Jacob was funny and attentive, asking me lots of questions about myself and sharing stories about his own life. He worked in finance and talked about his job, but also mentioned loving to travel and hike on weekends. I found myself relaxing and enjoying his company. As the night went on, we ordered some small plates to share, fancy bruschetta, a cheese board, some kind of posh sliders. The food was delicious and paired well with our drinks. I was impressed by how knowledgeable Jacob seemed about wine and cocktails. He'd clearly been to places like this before. After a couple of hours, I was feeling pretty buzzed and having a great time. That's when Jacob suggested we go for a walk to get some fresh air. There was a park nearby that he said had a nice view of the city at night. It seemed like a romantic idea, so I agreed. We left the bar and started strolling towards the park. The night air felt good after the warmth of the bar. Jacob put his arm around me as we walked, and I felt a little thrill at his touch. When we got to the park entrance, I hesitated for a moment. It looked pretty dark and empty, but Jacob assured me it was safe and that he came here all the time. As we walked deeper into the park, the sounds of the city faded away. It was quieter here, just the rustle of leaves and our footsteps on the path. Jacob pointed out some of the trees and flowers, seeming to know a lot about the plants. I was impressed by his knowledge. We came to a small hill, and Jacob led me up it. At the top was a clearing with a great view of the city skyline all lit up. It was beautiful. We stood there for a while, Jacob's arm still around me, just taking in the view. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness being alone with him like this. That's when Jacob mentioned he had a surprise for me. My heart fluttered a bit, wondering what it could be. Maybe a kiss? He asked me to close my eyes. I hesitated for a moment, but he assured me it would be worth it. Against my better judgment, I let him tie a blindfold over my eyes. The moment the blindfold was on, everything changed. The romantic atmosphere vanished, replaced by a sudden chill of fear. Jacob's hands on my shoulders felt different, harder, more controlling. His voice when he spoke sounded colder somehow. I started to get a sinking feeling in my stomach. Before I could say anything or take the blindfold off, I heard a loud metallic clang, like something heavy dropping on the ground. My heart started racing. In a panic, I ripped off the blindfold. There on the ground in front of me was a large kitchen knife, glinting in the moonlight. I looked up at Jacob and saw a terrifying expression on his face that I'll never forget. His eyes were wide and wild, his mouth twisted in a cruel smile. This wasn't the charming man I'd been on a date with. This was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Without thinking, I turned and ran as fast as I could. I stumbled down the hill, branches whipping at my face and arms. I could hear heavy footsteps behind me getting closer. Somehow I made it to the main path and sprinted towards the park entrance. Everything was a blur as I ran. My lungs were burning, my feet aching in my heels. But pure adrenaline kept me going. I burst out of the park onto the street, looking around frantically. That's when I spotted a police officer on patrol across the road. I ran straight for him, screaming for help. The officer immediately sprang into action, calling for backup as I frantically tried to explain what happened between gasps for air. Within minutes, more police cars arrived and officers spread out to search the park. They found Jacob trying to escape and arrested him on the spot. I was shaking uncontrollably as I gave my statement to the police. That's when they told me the shocking truth. Jacob was actually a wanted serial killer who had evaded capture for years. He had been using dating apps to lure victims. I was nearly his latest target. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, victim support services, and trying to process what had happened. I deleted all my dating apps and could barely sleep, jumping at every little sound. It took months of therapy before I started to feel somewhat normal again. I spoke with a friend of mine who told me that I should be more careful when meeting strangers online. She told me about a website that she used to use when she meets someone that she doesn't really know very well.
She told me that I could go on a site called circle.com, which is an incredibly comprehensive handy tool that helps you find detailed information on just about anyone using just their name, phone number, email addresses, company, and more. Imagine scrolling on a dating site, meeting someone new, the man of your dreams, and listening to all their stories about who they are and the amazing corporate job they have. Or the fact that they wish to marry one day and start a family with you, and then discovering the dark truth that he is unemployed, has a criminal record, 3 kids, and has been divorced twice with a history of domestic violence. Using Circle can save you from wasted time and potentially save your life. With Circle, you have access to a massive database containing hundreds of millions of records, all available right at your fingertips. Get started with a $1 trial with the first link in the description and see what you can find out about someone. You can even check for your own name and see what information there is about you. And don't worry, all the information it provides comes from publicly available US records, so you can trust that it's both reliable and legal to use. So please, if you're listening, stay safe and use Circle. A big thanks to Circle for providing such a useful service and making it available to everyone and sponsoring this video.
When my mom decided to get back into dating after her divorce, I supported her 100%. She deserved to be happy again after so many years in an unhappy marriage. At first, she was hesitant to try online dating, but I encouraged her to give Tinder a shot. What did she have to lose? Her work was sending her out of state for a few weeks, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity for her to dip her toe in the dating pool again. I helped her set up her profile, swiping left and right together on potential matches. She was picky, insisting she just wanted something casual after being tied down for so long. I understood completely. When she matched with Gary, he seemed decent enough at first glance. Late 40s, average-looking normal hobbies. But when I looked closer, the red flags started popping up. Most of his photos looked like stock images pulled off Google. His bio was vague and revealed little about his personality. And some of his messages raised my suspicions about his intentions. I advised my mom to be cautious, but she brushed off my concerns. She was an adult, she reminded me. She could take care of herself. So they made plans to meet up when she arrived in his city for work. Against my better judgment, I wished her well and told her to text me when she got back safely. 4 hours later, she messaged me in a panic. Somehow Gary had figured out which flight she was taking the next day and used that information to look up where she lived. He found her full name and tracked down her Facebook, even finding my dad in the process. Then the harassing messages started. Gary told my mom he loved her but didn't trust her. He sent my dad screenshots of their conversations and photos from their date. I was livid and terrified. How could this stranger have invaded our lives so quickly? We considered going to the police, but ultimately decided to just block Gary on everything and hope he lost interest. For weeks, I couldn't stop blaming myself. I was the one who pushed my mom to try online dating in the first place. If I had looked closer at Gary's profile or insisted on a background check, maybe this could have been prevented. But the damage was already done. My mom was shaken up for a long time after that night. She became withdrawn and anxious, hesitant to leave the house alone. It crushed me to see the strong, vibrant woman I knew retreat into herself for fear of what might happen if she put herself out there again. With time, encouragement, and therapy, my mom has come back to her old self. But we're both warier of online dating now. I hate that one man's obsessive behavior made her question her ability to find love again. She didn't deserve that. No one does. I know my mom just wanted to have a little fun after feeling neglected and controlled for so many years. Instead, she got a terrifying glimpse of the creeps that lurk behind harmless-looking profiles. We should have been more careful, but the blame rests squarely on Gary's shoulders. My mom still believes there are good guys out there worth taking a chance on. I hope she's right. She remains open to finding love again one day, even if it's no longer through Tinder. Her spirit wasn't broken by one man's disturbing obsession. But I'll be vetting any future suitors much more thoroughly from now on to keep her safe. My mom deserves the very best. After that traumatic experience, my mom took a long break from dating to focus on herself. She reconnected with old friends, traveled more for work and leisure, and even started taking art classes at the community center. I was thrilled to see her pursuing hobbies and activities that brought her joy, regardless of her relationship status. A few months later, she tentatively decided to give dating another try, but insisted on a different approach. No more online profiles and strangers, only men referred by friends and family who could properly vouch for them. She went on a handful of group dates and couple setups, keeping everything low-key and casual. I could tell she was still feeling wary, constantly looking over her shoulder and flinching at every notification on her phone. But slowly she relaxed and regained some of her characteristic warmth and openness. She wasn't going to let fear rule her life, even if that meant proceeding more cautiously. On one group camping trip, she hit it off with a longtime family friend named Mark. They bonded over their shared love of the outdoors, and he made her laugh with corny jokes around the campfire. He was a complete gentleman who didn't push or pry, but seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her better. My mom tried not to get her hopes up. After all, she barely knew Mark beyond brief interactions at family events over the years. But I encouraged her to keep talking to him, since he came with a trusted referral. They started going on more dates, just the two of them. Hiking, cycling, checking out the farmer's market. I could see glimpses of the old spark returning to my mom's eyes. It warmed my heart to see her coming out of her shell and opening up again. Of course, I still worried about her, but did my best not to smother her with overprotectiveness. She was an adult and deserved the freedom to make her own choices. All I could do was support her and provide a listening ear if she ever wanted to talk. Mark turned out to be a genuinely kind, thoughtful man, the total opposite of online predators like Gary. He respected my mom's boundaries every step of the way and never rushed her into anything she wasn't ready for. Their bond deepened slowly over many dates, phone calls, and heartfelt conversations. 1 year after that traumatic online dating experience, my mom finally felt ready for another serious relationship with Mark. The caution and mild distrust faded as he consistently proved his worth through his words and actions. On their 1-year anniversary, he even gave her a promise ring as a symbol of his commitment. Of course, I still worry about my mom sometimes. No one deserves to have their sense of safety and trust so severely shaken, but she refuses to let fear control her life or close her heart off to new love. My mom is brave for putting herself out there again, even more carefully this time. Though online dating brought her more trauma than happiness, I'm so proud of her for finding love again on her own terms. She and Mark remind me that there are still good people in this world, no matter how many creeps you encounter. I had matched with this girl on Tinder and was pretty excited about it. We seemed to hit it off right away and were soon texting back and forth constantly. I was really feeling the connection, so I went ahead and asked her if she wanted to go out the next night. To my surprise and delight, she agreed. I couldn't believe my luck. About 5 minutes after she said yes, she dropped a bit of a bombshell on me. She casually mentioned that she was permanently in a wheelchair. I wasn't quite sure how to take this news. I didn't want to come across as a jerk by canceling on her now, but I also didn't want to lead her on if this was going to be an issue for me. I decided to just go with the flow and see how the date went. After all, she seemed really cool so far. A wheelchair wasn't going to change that. We spent the rest of the evening texting and then talked on the phone before bed. She was funny and interesting to chat with. I was really looking forward to meeting her. The next morning, I got an early call from her. She told me she had done something crazy but wouldn't say what it was. She was going to send me a picture later to show me. I'll admit I was intrigued. A few hours went by and then she called me back. She had gone out and gotten my name tattooed on her wrist. I was completely shocked. We had just started talking yesterday, and now I was literally a part of her. I talked to some friends about this girl and her impulsiveness. They all agreed it was pretty crazy, but were also curious what would happen next. I decided to just go on the date as planned. I had to see for myself if this tattoo was real. Plus, she seemed to really like me as she was willing to get a tattoo of my name already. I didn't want to brush that off completely. On the way to pick her up, I realized my car might not easily accommodate her wheelchair. Since I knew she drove, I gave her a call and asked if we could take her car instead. She said no problem and came to pick me up. When she pulled up, I saw that her car was not handicap accessible at all. Turns out she just uses 2 crutches to drive, one for the gas and one for the brake. I was pretty nervous about this setup as we got on the freeway. Maneuvering through all that traffic like that did not seem safe. We went to dinner, and midway through our meal she got a call from her daughter. I learned she had left her 10-year-old home alone, and the poor kid was scared. I suggested we wrap up dinner and get back so she could be with her daughter. But my date just casually mentioned she had given the girl something to make her sleep, so it was fine. This whole thing did not sit right with me at all. I had planned to take her to a movie after dinner, but the situation with her daughter had me ready to just call it a night. On the drive back to her place, she suddenly told me she felt kind of drunk. I knew she'd only had 1 drink with dinner, so this was also concerning. I asked if I could drive instead, but she declined. She spit into the fast lane and used one of her crutches to press the gas pedal down farther. I sincerely thought I might not make it home alive. By some miracle, we did arrive safely back at her place. I quietly wheeled her to the door and said a quick goodbye, relieved to have escaped without further incident. I looked down at her wrist and saw my name still there in fresh ink. As crazy as the night had been, at least I knew the tattoo part was real. I drove home still in disbelief at everything that had transpired over the last 24 hours. It certainly was not what I had expected from a Tinder date, but I was just glad to have made it home in one piece. I knew I probably wouldn't be seeing that girl again after the chaos of our evening together. It was definitely a night to remember, though, even if for all the wrong reasons. Online dating can really be a wild ride sometimes. You just never know who you might meet or what kinds of adventures they might take you on. This was one adventure that gave me my fill of excitement for quite a while. As I laid in bed replaying the crazy events in my head, I realized that despite the sheer absurdity of it all, there was a small part of me that was curious to see her again. I guess near-death experiences have a way of bonding people, but logic prevailed, and I knew pursuing anything further would be unwise. I decided my best move was to just be grateful for the story and move on. There were plenty of other matches to explore. The next day I met up with some friends and told them the whole crazy story. They got a good laugh out of it, though they agree I was lucky to have made it out in one piece. We theorized about what might have been going through that girl's head to make her act so recklessly. Was she seeking attention? Trying to push some boundaries? Simply chaotic for the thrill of it? I realized I would probably never know what truly motivated her behavior. My friend said I should consider reporting her on Tinder before she pulls a stunt like that again with some other guy. But I hesitated, feeling like she hadn't done anything too malicious, just misguided. Maybe she really did like me and didn't know how else to show it. I decided against reporting her. I figured the best thing I could do was just gently discourage her if she reached out again. The night I met Tattoo Girl will certainly make for one heck of a story to tell over drinks with friends for years to come. I still remember that first date with Jamie like it was yesterday. We had matched on Tinder a few weeks prior and hit it off right away, messaging each other. When we finally met up for dinner, the conversation flowed effortlessly and we closed down the restaurant talking and laughing. I left feeling like I had really connected with someone special. Jamie messaged later that night saying what an amazing time it had been. I agreed and made plans to see each other again soon. Little did I know that would be the beginning of my nightmare. The next morning, I stopped at my usual coffee shop on the way to work. As I stood in line, I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned around and there was Jamie, acting surprised to see me. I was a bit thrown off guard, but Jamie claimed to just be grabbing coffee in the area. We chatted briefly before I had to head to work. Something about the encounter felt odd, but I brushed it off. Later that week, while grabbing lunch near my office, I ran into Jamie again. Once more, Jamie acted completely surprised and said it was just a crazy coincidence. At this point, my guard started to go up, but Jamie seemed so friendly that I doubted my gut feeling. By the third coincidental encounter that week, I knew something strange was going on. I'd stopped on my way home to pick up some groceries. As I was checking out, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Whirling around, there was Jamie with a huge grin. Jamie joked about us having to stop meeting like this, but by now, red flags were waving in my mind. There was no way these meetings were by chance. I became even more convinced of Jamie's disturbing behavior a few days later. I was home relaxing on a Friday night when my phone dinged. It was a message from Jamie asking what I was up to and if I wanted to meet up later. The thing was, I hadn't told Jamie where I lived. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up as I realized Jamie somehow knew my address. Trying not to panic, I politely declined meeting up, saying I had plans that night. I immediately blocked Jamie's number and social media. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of wine, unnerved by the idea that I was being stalked. The next morning, my heart dropped when I saw an envelope had been slid under my door. Inside were photos of me doing mundane activities like walking to my car or picking up my mail. But all had been taken from inside my home without my knowledge. Jamie had found a way to gain access and violate my privacy. I reported Jamie to the police with the evidence and installed security cameras around my property. However, over the next few weeks, strange things kept happening. Items would be moved or go missing in my home. I hear creaking on my roof or scratching at my doors and windows late at night. My car tires were slashed and threatening messages left on my answering machine. No matter what I did, I couldn't shake Jamie. The police tried to track Jamie down, but had little luck. I was told to take precautions and stay vigilant. I started keeping a baseball bat by my bed and slept poorly, constantly feeling watched. I was anxious any time I left my house, looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. After a couple horrible months living like this, the stalking seemed to stop suddenly. The police never caught Jamie, but I also got no more signs I was being harassed. I can only hope Jamie finally got bored and moved on to another poor victim. I still have trust issues and paranoia thanks to that Tinder match gone totally wrong. It taught me you really can't predict another person's intentions, no matter how charming they may seem. I'm much more cautious now about who I let into my life and my home. That feeling of violation sticks with me, making me question if I'll ever feel safe letting someone new get close again. For now, I'm keeping my distance from dating apps, focusing on self-care and rebuilding my sense of security. What happened to me is an unfortunate reminder that monsters can hide behind pretty faces and flattering words. Some chapters are better left unread. I decided to seek professional help to process the trauma I went through. I found a therapist who specializes in treating victims of stalking and harassment. During our sessions, she helped me realize my experience with Jamie was not my fault. Jamie made the disturbing choice to violate my boundaries, and no one deserves to be terrorized like that. My therapist also gave me tools to manage my anxiety and hypervigilance when out in public. We worked on thought exercises to challenge my fears that Jamie would reappear and hurt me again. Over time, I regained a sense of empowerment and control over my life once more. I refused to let Jamie's actions dictate how I lived. With my therapist's guidance, I also took practical steps to improve my security at home. I invested in an upgraded alarm system and took self-defense classes to boost my confidence. She encouraged me to lean on close friends and family during this healing process too. Their support was invaluable in getting me through the darker days. Today, I am in a much better place thanks to the professional support and my own inner strength. I still occasionally struggle with paranoia about my safety, but I have coping strategies to stay grounded. It took time to rebuild my ability to trust, but I now have an amazing circle of kind and caring people in my life. While I may always carry some scars from what I endured, I refuse to stay a victim. If anything, surviving that ordeal gave me greater compassion and wisdom. I hope by sharing my story, I can help others who have suffered similar trauma feel less alone. There is light to be found again, even after the darkest of nights. I still get chills when I think back to that fateful match on Tinder. James seemed perfect at first. We had so much in common and conversation flowed effortlessly. After a few great dates, he casually mentioned having a twin brother named John who lived with him and was a bit different. I didn't pry further since family dynamics can be complicated. The first odd instance happened about 3 weeks into dating James. He forgot mentioning a favorite restaurant of his that we had literally discussed on our last date. When I asked about the sudden memory lapse, James looked confused and denied having that conversation at all. I chalked it up to a simple mistake. A few days later, another peculiar thing occurred. James claimed he hated horror movies, but I distinctly remembered watching The Conjuring on our movie night the week before. Once again, he insisted I was mistaken. Strange, I thought, but maybe he was just embarrassed to admit his scare factor. Things got weirder when James appeared to stand me out for a dinner date. He later said he got hell up at work, but his texts from earlier that day showed him confirming our plans at the restaurant. I started wondering if I was going crazy or James was gaslighting me. My confusion peaked when I ran into James at a coffee shop, only it wasn't James at all. It was his twin John. John seemed anxious and shuffled away after a few minutes of awkward small talk. When I confronted James about it, he denied any knowledge of the encounter. Finally, the chilling truth dawned on me. Somehow I have been dating both twins this whole time without realizing it. They intentionally misled and manipulated me by switching places and lying. All the strange memory lapses and contradictions now made perfect sense. I immediately ended all contact with James and John. I blocked their numbers and accounts. I avoided all our usual hangouts, worried one of them might show up. I became hyper-vigilant walking alone or at night. My trust was completely shattered. To this day, I still have trouble dating. I analyze every potential match exhaustively, desperate to avoid another pathological situation. I look for any red flags immediately. If anything seems off, I cut contact. My Tinder tale is a cautionary one. You never truly know someone based on an online profile and a few dates. Take things slow and listen to your instincts. Don't ignore strange behavior or inconsistencies. And never dismiss the potential danger of becoming intimately involved with a manipulative or dishonest person. They may pretend to be someone they're not until it's too late. My greatest regret is not picking up on the signs sooner before things spiraled out of control. It's a frightening experience I still haven't fully recovered from, but I'm slowly learning to open my heart again. I decided to try dating again about 6 months after the incident. My friends were encouraging me to get back out there, saying I couldn't let one bad experience stop me from finding love. I was hesitant at first, still shaken from what happened. But slowly I regained enough courage to download a dating app again. I was far more cautious this time. I kept all interactions limited to the app at first, not yet ready to meet anyone in person. I studied each profile carefully, on high alert for any oddities or inconsistencies. At the first sign of anything suspicious, I'd block the match without hesitation. When Andrew's profile came along, he seemed sincere and sweet. We chatted for weeks before I felt comfortable meeting up. The first few dates went smoothly, no red flags yet. But I remained vigilant, keeping personal details vague. After about a month of dating Andrew, old anxieties started bubbling up. Déjà vu hit me anytime he forgot a previous conversation. I bristled when minor details about his work or hobbies changed. Though likely innocent mistakes, my mind raced to the worst-case scenario. I tried to keep my cool, but found myself snapping at Andrew over tiny things. My distrust was spiraling out of control. Finally, I knew I had to be fully honest or end things. I explained my bizarre Tinder history and admitted his benign slip-ups were triggering panic. To my relief, Andrew offered empathy and patience. He understood my heightened guardedness and promised to earn back my faith slowly. While I entered cautiously, over time the sincerity of his words became clear. He never pressured me to open up before I was ready. We communicated openly, even about my doubts. It was bumpy at times, but he proved consistently trustworthy. A year later, I finally feel secure with Andrew. My past experience will always linger as a reminder to heed warning signs. But taking another chance on love taught me not to let fear win. With openness, honesty, and patience, 2 wounded hearts can build a healthy relationship. I'm still healing, but no longer allowing the ghosts of toxic twins to dictate my capacity for a partner. Those scars remain. The right person can help you reopen your heart when you're ready. The relief I feel being in a stable relationship now is profound. For so long, I wondered if I'd ever regain the ability to trust fully again, to give my heart freely without bracing for the worst. It seemed like that openness died the day I became ensnared by John and James' sick game. For a while, I saw danger in every new dating prospect. Every minor inconsistency felt like impending deceit. I was hypervigilant for duplicity, practically interrogating innocent matches. My cynicism messed things before they even started. With Andrew, the shift was gradual. He understood when I needed to take things excruciatingly slow. We talked openly about my trauma and lingering effects. When old fears flared up, he responded calmly and caringly. It took time to chip away my emotional armor, but he weathered each weary phase, gently easing me forward again. Eventually, the joy of just being together outweighed my impulse to pull back. I learned to live in the moment again, not constantly on edge. The damaging thoughts and reactions still crop up now and then, but I've stopped letting them derail all progress. No relationship is totally smooth. There'll always be misunderstandings or mistakes, but if the care and core values are there, it's worth nurturing. Renewed trust didn't happen overnight. It came through daily patience, empathy, and genuine effort. Andrew showed me that a healthy partner uplifts you even through the lingering battle scars. I'm still a work in progress, but no longer defined solely by wounds from my past. Just being reminded of that possibility was the first step toward truly opening my heart again when I was ready. It just took finding the right person willing to walk that long road with me. It all started so innocently. We matched on Tinder and he seemed absolutely perfect. Funny, charming, easy to talk to. I was smitten right away. Our first few dates were amazing. He took me to cool speakeasies I'd never heard of before, and we would talk for hours about everything under the sun. I really thought I hit the jackpot. After about a month of blissful dating, strange things started happening. I began noticing odd posts on my Facebook that I know I didn't write. At first, I thought maybe I had accidentally posted something weird and just didn't remember, but then it kept happening. Paragraph-long statuses rambling about topics I'd never discuss. Comments on friends' pages that didn't sound like me at all. I changed my password many times, but it kept occurring. Around the same time, photos began appearing in my phone's camera roll that I definitely did not take. Selfies and clothes I don't own in places I've never been. I was really freaked out and worried I was being hacked. I took my phone to the Genius Bar at the Apple Store, but they insisted there was no evidence of a hack, and that the photos and social media posts were definitely coming from my devices. I confronted my Tinder match about it, but he made me feel like I was losing my mind. He insisted I must be sleepwalking or something and doing these things without realizing it. As much as I wanted to believe him, I knew deep down something more sinister was at play. Then came the emails. Long rants addressed to my family and friends filled with hurtful language that in no way resembled my writing style or personality. I never sent these, but they would appear in my sent folder as if I had. I started questioning my own sanity. Was I unknowingly doing all of this? Did I have some kind of split personality disorder I was previously unaware of? No, I finally realized this was no accident or mental condition. This was purposeful gaslighting to make me distrust my own mind and memory. After confronting my Tinder match again, he dropped the innocent act and revealed that he had been stalking me for months before we met online. He knew personal things about me I never shared and had clearly been accessing my devices and accounts without my knowledge. I was horrified and immediately ended our relationship. I struggled for a long time afterward, feeling violated and unable to trust my own perception. But eventually, I regained my confidence and realized that what happened was not my fault. That maybe we can never fully know someone, even those who seem perfect on the surface. I became much more cautious about online dating after that, which was hard as someone who hates meeting people organically. But in the end, I am thankful I escaped relatively unscathed and did not ignore the red flags sooner. Who knows what someone capable of such deception and mind games could have done if I let that relationship progress further. I'm just happy that I can close that scary chapter of my life, and have learned to protect myself better for the future. The world can be filled with dangerous people hiding their true selves behind charming online profiles. I never would have imagined such a horror story could come from simply swiping right on an attractive stranger. But that experience taught me we truly can't take anything at face value, especially in our technology-driven dating culture. I am wiser now, and while it took some time to regain trust, I will not let one sociopath destroy my ability to forge real connections. The darkness showed me that I can persevere and shine all the brighter. I felt so violated and exposed at the time, but looking back now, I feel stronger knowing I broke free from his toxic grasp. I listened to my instincts that something was very wrong rather than ignoring the red flags. I stood up for myself and my sanity when he tried to manipulate me into thinking it was all in my head. What happened will always be a part of me, but it does not define me. I reclaimed my sense of self, my accounts, my privacy. While he briefly controlled my online world, he did not get to control me. No one has that power over me but myself. I emerged wiser, more cautious, and discerning. I am thankful that relationship did not progress further before I uncovered the truth. Some lessons are learned the hard way, through fear and betrayal. I cannot change what happened, but I can grow from it. Now I trust my gut, protect my peace of mind, and will not let anyone shake my spirit again. This was a harsh wake-up call, but in the end I won. I felt so violated and exposed at the time, but looking back now I feel stronger knowing I broke free from his toxic grasp. I listened to my instincts that something was very wrong rather than ignoring the red flags. I stood up for myself and my sanity when he tried to manipulate me into thinking it was all in my head. What happened will always be a part of me, but it does not define me. I reclaimed my sense of self, my accounts, my privacy. While he briefly controlled my online world, he did not get to control me. No one has that power over me but myself. I emerged wiser, more cautious, and discerning. I am thankful that relationship did not progress further before I uncovered the truth. Some lessons are learned the hard way through fear and betrayal. I cannot change what happened, but I can grow from it. Now I trust my gut, protect my peace of mind, and will not let anyone shake my spirit again. This was a harsh wake-up call, but in the end I won. The darkness showed me that I can persevere and shine all the brighter. I felt so violated and exposed at the time, but looking back now I feel stronger knowing I broke free from his toxic grasp. I listened to my instincts that something was very wrong, rather than ignoring the red flags. I stood up for myself and my sanity when he tried to manipulate me into thinking it was all in my head. What happened will always be a part of me, but it does not define me. I reclaimed my sense of self, my accounts, my privacy. While he briefly controlled my online world, he did not get to control me. No one has that power over me but myself. I emerged wiser, more cautious, and discerning. I am thankful that relationship did not progress further before I uncovered the truth. Some lessons are learned the hard way through fear and betrayal. I cannot change what happened, but I can grow from it. Now I trust my gut, protect my peace of mind, and will not let anyone shake my spirit again. This was a harsh wake-up call, but in the end I won. I felt so violated and exposed at the time, but looking back now I feel stronger knowing I broke free from his toxic grasp. I listened to my instincts that something was very wrong rather than ignoring the red flags. I stood up for myself and my sanity when he tried to manipulate me into thinking it was all in my head. I have been using Tinder for a few months with not much luck. Most of my matches either never messaged me back or the conversation fizzled out after a few exchanges. But then I matched with Dean. His profile picture showed a handsome guy with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile. When he messaged me, he came across as charming and funny. After chatting for a week, we decided to meet up for dinner. The date went really well. Dean was just as charming in person as he was over text. We talked for hours and really hit it off. Before parting ways, we made plans for a second date later that week. When I got home from the date, I couldn't stop smiling. It had been so long since I had such an effortless connection with someone. Over the next few weeks, Dean and I went on several more dates. We took walks in the park, tried new restaurants, and spent evenings cooking together at my apartment. Things were going great. I felt like I had finally met someone special. But then small oddities started happening. One day I came home to find the front door unlocked. I clearly remember locking it when I left that morning, so I knew I hadn't left it unlocked myself. I shrugged it off at the time, thinking maybe I was mistaken. A few days later, I'd noticed my shower gel had been moved from its usual spot in the shower caddy. It was now on the edge of the tub. Once again, I tried to convince myself I had just misplaced it. But deep down, I knew I always kept it in the same spot. Other trivial things continued happening. My throw pillows would be arranged differently on the couch or my magazines stacked in a new order on the coffee table. Items from my bathroom or kitchen would be missing for a day or two, and show up again in a different place. I also occasionally noticed a faint but unfamiliar smell in the apartment, sort of musky and earthy. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining things or forgetting small details about where I had placed my belongings. But over time, it became clear someone had been coming into my home while I was out. I suspected it might be Dean since he was the only person besides me who had been to my apartment recently. One evening, I came home to a handwritten note placed neatly on my pillow. It said, "Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you again soon, Toxo." I hadn't left the note there. My heart started racing. Dean must have used a hidden spare key I once showed him to get inside while I was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I immediately called Dean and confronted him about the break-ins. But he acted shocked and insisted it must be some kind of misunderstanding. He claimed he would never enter my apartment without permission and suggested I must have just forgotten about moving things around or writing the note myself. Over the next few days, Dean continued acting completely normal, messaging me sweet things like he always had. Meanwhile, I was a nervous wreck over what was happening in my home. I started coming straight home after work instead of running errands to try and catch Dean in the act if he came over. I also asked the landlord to change the locks. A week later, I arrived home to find a bouquet of red roses on the kitchen counter and candlelit dinner for two sal on the table. Romantic gestures like this would have thrilled me before, but now they terrified me. Dean had managed to get inside again somehow. I called him, yelling that I knew he was the one doing all of this and he needed to stay away from me and my home. But he insisted I had it all wrong, that he would never enter without my permission. In his mind, these were just thoughtful romantic surprises to show how much he cared. No matter what I said, he refused to admit fault or apologize. Eventually, I just stopped responding to Dean's calls and texts. Changing the lock seemed to work for a while, but I remained paranoid he would find another way to get inside. I hardly slept, listening for any unusual sounds at night. I even considered moving, but the thought of going through the hassle and expense made me anxious. It's been a few months now since I cut off contact with Dean. I still double and triple check that my door is locked. I installed an alarm system and cameras to ensure he can't get in again. I stopped using Tinder for a while, worried about encountering another person like Dean. With time, my anxiety has lessened but not completely gone away. I still feel violated knowing someone was able to intrude on the safety of my home so easily. But I'm hopeful that as more time passes, the lingering unease from that experience will fade. For now, I'm keeping my circle small and focusing on self-care while rebuilding a sense of security. I decided to try Tinder again after taking a long break. I figured meeting new people would help me move on from what happened with Dean. However, I was super cautious this time around. I didn't readily share my address and always met matches in public first. If things seemed to progress, I would eventually invite them over, but never for too long. I also paid close attention for any red flags. Luckily, most of my new matches were respectful, but there were a couple that gave me bad vibes. One guy, Alex, constantly asked prying questions about my schedule and routine. He would say things like, "I wish I could be there to greet you after work," or "It must get lonely coming home to an empty apartment each night." His persistence made me uncomfortable, so I stopped responding. Another match named Steve would make odd references to my apartment in conversation like, "I bet your living room gets great light in the evenings," or "What's your bedroom decorated like?" At first I shrugged it off as small talk, but the specific details he mentioned seemed too coincidental. When I asked how he knew what my rooms looked like, he backtracked and claimed he was just guessing. After that, I cut off contact immediately. Having those experiences reminded me to take precautions until I really knew someone well. I made it a policy to meet in public for at least the first month of dating before inviting them over. I also started varying my daily routine, so it would be hard to pinpoint my coming and going patterns. If I got any weird vibes again, I trusted my instincts and didn't feel bad unmatching. After about 6 months of cautious dating, I finally met someone I truly clicked with. His name is Omar, and he's the total opposite of Dean. We took things slow, not even exchanging apartment keys until we had been together for half a year. When we spend time at each other's places now, I no longer feel the need to meticulously lock up my valuables or check that all my belongings are in their proper place after he leaves. The lingering paranoia from my experience with Dean has gradually lifted, and it's a relief to feel secure again. Being with Omar has shown me that it is possible to find someone respectful on Tinder, as long as you listen to your gut and don't ignore red flags. I'm glad I didn't let one bad encounter completely sour me on dating apps. Taking prudent precautions along with having patience led me to someone trustworthy. My days of constantly worrying about unwanted visitors are finally over. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to stay safe when meeting anyone online with Circle. Use the limited time exclusive $1 trial offer through the first link in the description and keep yourself protected and informed. As always, please like and subscribe for more.